we don't operate on a 24-hour cycle like men do. We operate on a 27 to 29 day cycle. When I started to really understand, I was basically trying to fit myself in this mold that wasn't realistic for what my body and my wisdom wanted.
Welcome to the Foxy Mama Podcast, where creativity meets parenthood. I'm your host, Lindsay Barrasse, and each week we'll explore the world of creative entrepreneurship and business through the lens of motherhood. Join us as we chat with inspiring mamas and parents sharing their stories, insights, and the art of balancing it all. Whether you're an artist, entrepreneur, or just navigating parenthood, this is your space to find inspiration, helpful tips, and support. Now let's get Foxy Mama. Hey, I'm Lindsay, host of the Foxy Mama Podcast, and I'm here with Katie May, soul and sacred embodiment mentor, mom of two, 11 and 7, partnered for 21 years, right? And married for 17 of those years. And you're going to share your wisdom and energy, and let's just have this flow and conversation. I love it. I love it. So let's dive in, Katie. Tell me more about yourself and what you do.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on your podcast today. I'm so excited. I've been looking forward to this all week to just have, I love having what I call badass conversations. So especially with other mamas doing the damn thing. So I am so excited to be here. Like you said, I am a soul and sacred feminine guide and mentor for women and mothers. And I have been on a whole journey myself over the last, I would say, 10 to 11 years. I really look at motherhood as my first awakening into like, where do I want to go with life? It caused me to really question a lot of myself. And, you know, we can certainly talk about that more, but I've learned so much in just my own healing journey, and then integrating and supporting my clients and being a mentor to others is my soul's work. So I'm excited to share.
Isn't it amazing how like motherhood does that? I feel more connected with my own body than I ever have before. And I even said we have a mom group. We went through all this training here together. We did an embodiment series, through Flow of Life of Asheville, and prenatal yoga, postnatal yoga with our little ones. And we do meetups, and it's just really great to have that community of women. And I was saying to them, I'm like, I love my body more than I ever had. And in this process of this journey of motherhood, I've healed my own wounds. I used to look at my body and say like, oh, I need another 10 pounds to lose, or I, look at these magazines or whatever, and I want to be like that. And now I look at my body in the mirror and be like, I birthed a human. I grew this perfect being. My body is this amazing temple, and it's just created this wonderful little man who is just, oh my God, like today, just like laying in bed with him and his eyes, and he just exploring the world. It was just so phenomenal. So let's dive in more about what it is that you do. So what is Soul and Sacred Embodiment Mentor? What do you do?
That's a really beautiful question. So I actually started out more sort of in the realms of like health coaching because of my background as a nurse. I really wanted to inspire people to live as healed and healthy as possible, because seeing my journey working with people at usually the end of life, because that's the type of nursing work that I do. I noticed this big theme of people feeling like they wanted to do more, that they didn't have time, that they missed out. And I was like, there has to be a better way to support people to actually honor and embody their lived experience as they're going through life, rather than waiting till the end of life and then being like, oh shit, like I want to do all these things and I didn't do them. And I really wanted to create ways to help people fully honor and embody their life. And as I started my own journey in fully honoring and embodying my life, I started to really learn like what keeps people from honoring and embodying their life. There's a lot of healing that often has to happen for people to fully accept themselves where they are, both in body, but also I realize the importance of our soul, our spiritual, mental, emotional parts of us, and really learning how to truly show up to life as a whole being, instead of what a lot of us do. And without the awareness of that, we cut parts of ourselves off. We fit ourselves in boxes. We kind of submit to the conditioning of the world that says you need to be this way or you need to do this, rather than learning to listen to our own selves and our own souls, especially as women. I feel like it's really important for us to come back to the sacredness of our beings, of our bodies, as vessels, as portals of life. Like you said, like we literally have like the makeup to create physical life, but also to create life force, energy in the world, healing energy. And I just found the more I dove into this work for both myself and then working with clients, there's such a big disconnect, especially for us as women, with what it means to move in the world as a feminine essenced being, because the shape of our world is very masculine and very patriarchal. And so it became very clear to me that integrating the feminine back into our lives as women, the sacredness is what I call it, is a key part of really showing up to our lives as whole beings.
Yeah. Now you mentioned that commitment of like reconnecting women to that journey. Can you and just being that sacred feminine? Can you explain what sacred feminine means to you and to our listeners?
Yes, we could probably have a whole podcast series on this, but in a short nutshell, so I believe we have both sacred feminine and sacred masculine energy within all of us, and it's necessary to have both. But I think because a lot of us have been disconnected from our feminine essence, which to me is really about being in tune with your intuition, being in tune with nature, being in flow with life, honoring your body, honoring the cyclical nature of our bodies, especially as women. We don't operate on a 24-hour cycle like men do. We operate on a 27 to 29 day cycle. And so when I started to really understand, I was basically trying to fit myself in this mold that wasn't realistic for what my body and my wisdom wanted. And I think when that happens, a lot of things that come up for women, especially, is anxiety, depression, feeling disconnected, not being able to be present. And that's because our souls are feeling disconnected. So when we can unify with the feminine aspects of our body, of our energy, of our creativity, of learning how to be able to be in pleasure and play and receiving rather than always giving, especially as moms, we're great at giving, but very rarely do we sit back and actually receive. So the sacred feminine is about the reclamation of all of these aspects of yourself, not just as a person who's here to serve and support others, but to really be an embodiment of this life force energy, of this creatrix energy, because that's what we're here to do.
Yeah. And how have you brought that into your own motherhood journey? You have two children, 11 and 7, and that's yes, they're close in age, but different development there. And how do you bring that to their attention? How do you put that into and infuse that energy and infuse that way of being into your life as a family?
Such a rich question. So for me, it has started with learning to really look at motherhood as a spiritual practice for myself. Because what I started to realize as my kids were born, and then I went through that portal, right? Like postpartum and like that whole, really the whole first like year or two after you have a baby is this huge like portal of transition. And one, we don't talk about that enough as women. And as I have seen my children going through, ages and stages now, looking back, I can see where every initiation for them has been an initiation for me. Every big emotion, every big transition point, it's a invitation to your deeper understanding of yourself. Because for many of us, we go through life, right? We go through our own childhood, we come into adulthood, and I would say a large majority of us don't go back and review anything that's happened in childhood until something happens in your own life and you're like, what is going on here, right? Like you're triggered. There's a big emotion for you. There's a big reaction. And that's what started happening in my own journey with my kids. They started to be themselves. And I was like, I don't know what to do with this. I don't know what to do with you. There is no book that can tell me how to raise you, right? And so the only thing I had left was, let's go on an inward journey and really use everything they're going through as also a healing portal for myself. So that's looked like a lot of inner child work, therapy, really learning how to release a lot of old conditions around people pleasing, having poor boundaries, being able to use my voice and take up space, being able to be authentic and like owning my authenticity and not shutting it down. And also then the nourishment piece, like learning how to take care of my body, learning how to really eat foods that are good for my body and drink water. I mean, what a concept, right? But I think as busy moms, like our care of ourselves often is the first thing to go when we're overwhelmed, when we're just trying to survive. And so really being able to identify like what helps women and mothers get back into their bodies to learn and understand their emotions are teachers, and how to really support ourselves physically as well as our nervous systems to regulate and ground and be present. Because otherwise we're just kind of popping through, flying through the day, not being mindful. And there's a lot of ways that we can integrate that for every individual.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love how you mentioned that it's not talked about enough, the postpartum journey. And it isn't. Like, I had no idea what to expect. And I was putting myself in front of offerings, and going through the trainings and reading all the books. Oh my goodness. My husband and I read so many books, right? And I love you were like, there's no book. Yeah, there's tons of books, but there's no book specifically for your trajectory of where you are going to be, how you experience life, how you're, take in, how you put out, all these things. Right. And we read every single, I think we read 20 to 30 books from What to Expect When You're Expecting to The Simplest Baby Book, which I highly recommend that one. That was very, I was like, okay, I could have just read that and that would have been, but it doesn't, it was nothing, this motherhood journey is nothing like I expected it. And going through what others have told me, my sister or my mother or my grandmother, it's very different from what they went through or what their experience is. Do you have any kind of recommendations that you would suggest to help during that postpartum journey?
Well, I think, like you said, there is no book, but I think the more open you can be to the journey of the unknown of it all, which is really hard when you're exhausted, your body's been through war, literally, and you're like, what the heck just happened? But one resource that I have that just actually was released from my beautiful friend at Once Again Mom, she's created a whole postpartum guide that has literally anything you could think of that you're going to want to know about in that postpartum period, as well as, creators, coaches, people that are doing this work currently who have contributed to this beautiful resource. So I can certainly send you a link for that because it is a very comprehensive resource. I mean, it goes from birth trauma to breastfeeding to mental emotional health for you as a mom. I mean, it really covers everything. But I think in my own journey, what has become most apparent to me is you can read all the books and knowledge is beautiful. But knowledge is only power when it's applied knowledge. When you can actually take the knowledge in and integrate it into your life and your experience so that it actually comes through your life.
Yeah. I love that. Like applying. There's a great kind of like fable, right? And it's and I'm gonna like probably butcher it, but it's a scholar, a teacher. He's on a ship with a bunch of sailors, right? And he, is reading all these books and going over with the people that are on the sailors, and maybe I said I'm going to butcher this, but the captain or whatever is just like, oh no, I don't know how to read. And the scholar's like, what do you mean you don't know how to read? And like laughs at him, right? And belittles him and makes fun of him. And the captain feels like, and then something else comes up and it's like, oh, well, what do you mean you don't know where how the stars shine, or what do you mean you don't know this about science? And each time he laughs and scoffs at them, right? And then there's this huge storm and the ship is going down and the scholar is just like, I don't know how to swim. And the captain's like, what do you mean you don't know how to swim? So he had all this knowledge and was scoffing at other people, right? And in theory, he probably read about how to swim, but did he apply it? Did he know how to swim? He was going to be on this long voyage on this boat, knowing that he's going to be in water, and like could have used his education to be like, oh, let me apply this. Let me learn how to swim. And I think that's so good that you mentioned that we can have all this knowledge, but it's how we apply it and how we put that out, as well as how we're receiving, we're putting our learned knowledge out and applying it. But what's the outcome? Okay, the trial and error. What can I learn from this experience? How can I grow? And that's perfect for a motherhood journey because we're all learning as we're doing. And we're learning, how our children are going to react to certain things. As I'm introducing, foods and different textures to my little one, I'm like, what do you like? What do you not like? And then just exploring things through his eyes is just such a gift. It's like rebirth, right? Mm-hmm. Just seeing him this morning, like look at the sunlight coming through and the shadow of the leaves up on the wall. And he's like, what is that? Why is that moving like that? And then the smiles and the joys that he had brought in. And no amount of reading a book can say, I could read a book and it could tell me about shadows on a wall from the leaves through the window. But until you experience that and put yourself in the way of that beauty, you're like, oh, wow, and apply that. So I think that's beautiful how you worded that. Do you think that there's kind of any little bit of advice that you could provide to mothers or parents in general, how they can honor that space and honor that embodiment and that wholeness feeling on a day-to-day life? Like, looking in the mirror and saying something, or what's your go-to advice?
So I'm a really big fan of finding the magic in the mundane, because that's where we live, right? We live in the mundane. As much as we want these mountaintop experiences all the time, like we wouldn't appreciate them, first of all, if that was all of our experience. We need the day to day. We need the mundane. But one thing that I've really found in my own journey and encourage in my client work is, how can you find that little glimmer in your day? Maybe it is watching the sun come through the window, or seeing how the sun's hitting this tree, or seeing the birds coming out, or the flowers blooming. Like, can you just stop and notice for a moment? Or maybe it's, like you said, like noticing your child, right? Like, our children are just innately designed to be magical, right? And I think I'm going to take a little side road here, but honestly, that's been one of the most triggering things of motherhood for me, is seeing where in my own life I lost my magic. Because I see it in my kids, and then I slowly start to see, especially as now they're getting older, those opportunities. I have the choice. Like, I can keep the magic going for them, or I can start to have to box them in, because that's what society says we're supposed to do, right? We're supposed to follow this path, go to college, do this, do that. And we get to choose, but we only can choose as much as we're willing as moms to stop and see the magic as well, to keep the magic, or to reignite our own magic. And so to start, it can be so simple. It can be, if you have a hard time, like looking in the mirror at yourself, I mean, that's a beautiful place to start. A lot of women that I start working with don't yet feel like they can truly see themselves. So start with nature. Start with a flower outside your window, or right now we're in such a beautiful fall season here where we live. Notice the colors, the vibrancy, notice the changes in the world around you. Sit with yourself for a moment, sit outside, put your bare feet in the earth and feel the earth holding you, right? Just start with that one practice. If you did that every day for less than 10 minutes, I'd say 3 minutes. If you go stand with your feet on the bare earth and just be, that will fundamentally change your body and your soul work and all that you're here for. You will start to see things so differently.
I don't know if you noticed, as you were talking about things, and when you said losing that magic, I teared up a little, because I was just, remembering. I'm like, wow, I know when I lost my magic, and I'm glad that I have this gift of taking it back and experiencing it back. And as a child, I was just such a magical being, so imaginative and creative and artistic. And at one point, I just shifted and was like, no, I gotta go to college. I got to get that degree. I have to do all these, check those boxes, as you said, make people happy, make my family happy. It's time to grow up, get a real job, things and it's funny, because my father, when I started going to school, and I went for art, but then for marketing, that marketing aspect and that corporate world. And he's like, I always thought you would go into film. He's like, I always saw, going on set, and you love filming, and you did it. And I forgot about it going to college, and then dating someone that didn't really have that artistic style mind, and going into the corporate world and looking to get that money and build up the ladder and grow. And I lost it. I became unhappy. I had that anxiety. I was having panic attacks. I look at that person, I'm like, I have no idea who I was in my 20s. And it wasn't until my late 20s that I regained that magic and started filming again and reliving that and finding myself working on films. And my dad's like, I told you. I told you, like, and it was just, everything happens for a reason. And I think I was supposed to go through that period so I could appreciate my journey now and where I am now. And it is a gift to have that. And I think something for me that was really beneficial was a gratitude journal. When I really started doing a gratitude practice, and it just started with 3 things daily that I'd write down. And it was anything from a hot shower, being grateful for just having a hot shower, or running water even, or a roof over my head. I went from that victim mindset to appreciating those small, mundane things that we really don't, we kind of overlook. We gloss over all I hate to say it, but the privileges that we do have before us. And yes, there are uglies in the world, of course, but we can also see the beauty that comes from that, and the lessons, and grow from that, and also give that gratitude. I am grateful for those experiences that I've had. I'm grateful for that growth, and I'm grateful for the journey that I'm on now, and the change that's occurring. And as you said, the beautiful fall season, and there's that saying, and it's all over in memes and plastered all over the internet, and people have signs on their walls and wallpaper or whatever, that the leaves are teaching us how beautiful it is to let go. But what a lot of people don't realize is when the leaves fall, this gives the tree and the trunk and the roots the ability to absorb more. And the tree is actually taking in more. So yes, it's giving us the ability to let go, but it's also this sign showing us that we can absorb more and take in more and grow our roots and reach out into the earth. And I love how you said, and I'm sorry for this tangent that I've been on, but to put our feet into the earth, because there's something so solid. Just take off your shoes and feel the grass beneath your feet and that earth, and just sit for 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 30 seconds, and just take a breath in, and then look around you and be like, wow, I'm here. I am present, and just enjoying that present moment. So what do you do that? Do you do that with your children? What kind of experiences do you practice on a day-to-day basis, with both the 11 and 7-year-old, or are they different? What does that look like on a day-to-day?
So every day is a little different. And I think, I love the concepts of rituals and habits. And, I think there is beauty in like having routine and consistency. That's the masculine, right? Masculine likes form, it likes structure, but the feminine is open to the adventure, is ready to play with different things every day. So it's kind of like a bridging of both. With my children, I try to keep it pretty simple because, they're both in school. And so by the time they get home, they're kind of toast, like they're kind of done. But what we have implemented in our family is when we sit down to have dinner together, I just ask them one question, and I ask them to share if there was a rose, a thorn, or a rainbow to their day. So rose being like something really sweet, thorn being something a little prickly or hard, and then a rainbow being something that they are hoping for, or something that, they are looking forward to. And I used to ask them all 3, and that got a little overwhelming. So now I said, pick, share with me a rose, a thorn, or a rainbow from your day. And that's just been a really sweet way for them to kind of share what's on their heart without feeling interrogated. And we all share as a family. Like I'll go around and share a rose that happened. And I love that it kind of like goes into what you were saying about gratitude. And I started doing a gratitude practice a few years ago. And, at first I felt a lot of resistance actually, because I was like, this feels, fake, or what if the day is not good and I don't want to pretend like it's good? Felt like in myself, I was like, am I just bypassing like all the bad things? But what I started to realize is where, I think this is a Tony Robbins statement, where your focus goes, your energy flows. So if we're focusing on the hard negative stuff all the time, and I'm not saying it doesn't deserve to have some energy sometimes, because that's how we heal, right? We have to go sometimes into that harder, more shadowy side of things. But when that's all you're focusing on, that's where your energy is going. That's where things are flowing. Because of the law of attraction, then you're going to see more negative, bad things in the world versus if you're able to shift your energy toward the things that you're grateful for. And like you said, it could be the smallest, like I got out of bed this morning. I was able to enjoy my cup of coffee. Like start with the littlest things. You'll start to notice that shift. And so the rose, the thorn, the rainbow is kind of our way of bringing that into our kids, practices of really identifying something that's been good about the day, something that's been challenging, something that we're hoping for. So that's one thing we do. The other thing we do is try to honor the moon every month. And we sit down and do like a little ritual together with either the new moon or the full moon. And we just talk about the themes of the moon, but also kind of just talk about like what we're releasing or what our intentions are for the next couple of weeks. And just have a few minutes to share with the guidance of the moon. That's it.
Love the products you're hearing us chat about on the Foxy Mama podcast? Find all the featured items on my personal Amazon shops page at amazon.com/shop/thelindsayboo. Happy shopping.
It's so wonderful and beautiful that you come together as a family to do that. And I love the rose, the thorn, and the rainbow aspect. I apply what was great that happened for you today? What was your win? Or just that open discussion, and jokingly, like my husband, cause I'll do it like right before we go to bed. I'm like, oh, what's something great that happened for you today? Right. And he's so exhausted and it's just turned into, oh, waking up next to you, but it's so great. And it just like warms my heart. And I was like, I know you're just getting out of the question.
He's like, I got a good way to just move right through this one.
Move right through, start my Z's and start snoring. But it's so great to come together as a family. And, whether that's honoring the new moon or saying, oh, once a month, we're going to play backgammon. I have no idea. Like something as a family, as this unit, is just such a beautiful thing. And yes, the gratitude practice was hard and I did skip it a lot first starting out. And then those 3 things turned into 5 and those 5 things turned into 10. And now it's, oh, let's see, like I'll fill the page and I'll just go. And then then I was like, well, I need to create this journal for other people to use. I have this practice, with my dates on top and I circle it and I have a space to write whatever I feel called to write, whether that's a mantra or a little part of the day. And then I just go to town writing about it, and writing down my gratitude. And sometimes they're bullet points or sometimes they're fluid, full on sentences. And it's just helped me so much. And now, it's hard, in that journey, do it mentally, right? Because the last thing I do at night is I'll be breastfeeding and it's the longest feed probably of the whole day. And it's like a 40-minute to an hour excursion and enjoying that time and spending that time with my son. So when I'm finished doing that, I'm just like, oh, I'm so tired that I don't write and I don't journal, but I'll mentally do it. Mm-hmm. But there is something so good to getting that pen to paper so that when I do have those days to do it, I just let it flow and just it could be 3, 4, 5 10 pages and just letting it all go. And I can't wait to have those traditions with my son, whatever it is that we feel called to do, monthly or daily practices. I think I might implement that rose, the thorn, and the rainbow because it's just such a visual. Mm-hmm. It's just beautiful. Now, you have been married for 17 years. Do you have any tips, any advice? How do you spend quality time together as a couple, and as parents, as that family? Is your husband joining in on that new moon ritual or moon ritual, or practice, or that daily rose, thorn, rainbow? And then what do you guys do for like a date night or quality one-on-one time?
Yeah. So marriage is such its own journey and its own portal as well. Like, just like I was talking about your kids mirroring you and where your healing lies. Oh, holy smokes. A marriage is equally in a different way that as well. So my advice, if you could call it that, it's kind of like what you said about the rebirth, right? Like, I think we have to be willing, no matter what the relationships are, friendships, motherhood, partnerships, we are not meant to stay the same. We are meant to be here, and we are evolving and changing, growing, learning, right? All the time. In a marriage, it's the same thing, right? So we have to be willing to let die what needs to be gone from a marriage. So in my marriage, for example, when we had been married for about 12 years, I found out my husband had an affair like 10 years prior. And so we had to navigate that. And there was times where we weren't sure if we were going to stay together or not. We, navigated a lot over those next couple of years, around our own sexualities, around just so many layers that had been not verbalized and even unaware to us until that time. And so I think any advice I could give a marriage would be to let the parts of your marriage die that aren't serving and supporting your evolution as individuals and as a couple, and realizing where you are both individuals, right? And you get to partner, and your partnership should elevate you together as well as individually, but it shouldn't be this thing that you constantly feel stuck by. And if you are feeling stuck in your relationship, whether it's a marriage or not, or just a partnership, there's often more to that. And I would definitely say, listen to your intuition. If you're feeling like you're not being able to be your fullest expressed self, if you're not being able to be supported and be held through the portals of life by your partner, it's time to have a harder conversation. And that can be scary for a lot of people because it means you have to face that if that doesn't go well, that partnership may dissolve. It may not be meant to last. And I think in our society as well, we have such a big focus on if a marriage doesn't last, it's a failed marriage. And I choose to see it as that marriage or that relationship had its time and it's not meant to go forward if that's what's happening. But there's a lot you can do. And to answer your second question, to keep that intimacy and that flame alive. And it really does come down to scheduling dates, getting them on the calendar, being intentional with time together, especially if you're a parent without children, as much as you can. I mean, for us, that looks like realistically about once a month, we can have a good, solid date night. But when we do that, we go have fun together. We go play games. We go on a hike. We go to a concert. We kind of live it up for that one night together. And then the rest of the month, we take intentional time to check in every day. If we, definitely can have some conversation without the children, finding things that you guys enjoy doing together, and realizing it's okay. And this is probably the biggest key I will add. It's actually imperative for each of you to have your own lives outside of your marriage. So making sure not just your date nights are there, but are you each getting time away from home without the children, without each other, to go do things that you enjoy as an individual? Because that's been one thing that my husband and I have found keeps our flame going, is when we're both feeling fed and supported to be our own unique person as well.
Yeah, it's so important. A lot of people think like, oh, I'm married now, it's our life and that's it. But it's so important to keep your identity, keep your truth to who you are and what you love to do, because what I like to do might not be what my husband likes to do. And if I'm forcing him to do all these things and vice versa, it's not going to be happy, right? It's not going to be a good experience for either of us. And boiling it down, communication. Communication is huge. The ability to evolve and to change. And that is what we are supposed to do as beings, right? If you think, okay, well, we're born and this is who we're supposed to be. Like, I wasn't who I was when I was a year old. I wasn't who I was when I was 10 years old. I wasn't 20, 30, and now at 40, I'm totally different than I was when I was in my 20s. Had I had met my husband in my early 20s, that wouldn't have worked, right? We are together almost 15 years, friends for a while before. And I think the person that I met when I first met him is drastically different, and the same for him to me. And that's so crucial and so important that we have been able to grow not only as a couple, but as individuals as well, and bringing our change and growth and our journey into our relationship. Now we just have to work on the date night aspect with having, a 7-month-old, and just, all the things and just navigating that. But it does look like, for us going on a beautiful hike with our son. And we love that. And just getting out into nature and just being around that and just having that discussion. And I think for us, one of the most helpful things was having someone to talk to. We are 9 years, with talking to our therapist, our confidant, our person, our coach, really. And it's not about, we're having trouble. Or we once said that to a family member that, we see a therapist, and this was like a few years ago, and they're like, well, why? What's going on? And they're like, nothing. We just have that person to talk to once a month, and it's great. We share maybe something that came up or something that didn't come up and we've been holding inside and it just came to the surface. But that ability to learn and to grow and to share with each other. And I think you are totally right with that. Not to sound like a Valley girl, but I'm like, oh, totally right. But I agree on that aspect, and just kind of looking at, okay, well, where are we at in the relationship now? Because it's drastically different than it was 7 months ago. It just, without, me being pregnant, right? Without me, being, a mom, just the journey and everything is so different. And for him too, what's that look like now that you're a father? How has that changed? How, has that changed your business, and how has that changed your personal life? And both of us, have the ability to work from home and be around our son right now. My husband is in the baby's room and enjoying some daddy and baby time. I like to say Foxy, my little Foxy boy, hence the Foxy Mama podcast. But it's just so important to have that togetherness and to have that separation. It's just very important. And for me, seeing that my parents didn't have that, my parents were great until they weren't. And they had their good days and they had their bad days, but they fought a lot and they really screamed at each other. I mean, the words that came out, and that for me is a childhood trauma that I'm dealing with and unearthing and saying, okay, well, now as a mom, how am I going to approach this if I have a disagreement with my husband? Let's communicate versus screaming at each other. Or, yes, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. But at its core, why is it happening? Right. Mm-hmm. And kind of resolve that and see what has been planted there, or what has to grow from that. And it's just looking at it as a beautiful thing. And yeah, all the things. So, I could talk to you forever.
I was going to say, we can go all day on attachment styles and family systems and all of that.
All of that. So how can our listeners find out more about you, and what type of people do you like to work with, and are you welcoming new do you use the word clients? Do you use a different word? Tell us all the things.
Yeah, so I have 2 programs right now that support women and mothers in really living more in connection with the sacredness of life. One is a membership that is called the Sacred Year Project. And basically we work with the seasons every cycle and tune into the energies of the season to help support our own growth, our own journey, our own cyclical living. And that is a really beautiful fluid membership that also pulls in other specialists, holistic practitioners, coaches, mentors to come in and share practices and medicine for the community. I also have a Sacred Mother course and mentorship that just launched in the last couple of months, and will likely be relaunching again in early 2024 for our second cohort. But that is specific for mothers who long to really tune into the sacredness of their being and move themselves from surviving to thriving. You can find me on Instagram at Embrace Yourself Whole, WHOLE, or my website at embraceyourselfwhole.com. You can send me an email. You can send me a DM on Instagram, and I would love to connect with you and just meet you, first of all. And if you're interested in any of my programs at any point, obviously connect about that as well. I also offer one-on-one support, and that's kind of available ongoing, really working on soul and spiritual, mental, emotional support for women and mothers.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing your journey and your time. And this, I could have talked to you for a long time.
Same.
And maybe we'll have you, I'd love to have you again as a guest to dive more into your program for mothers and talk more about that. But thank you so much for being here and this journey that we've come on together, and for being a Foxy Mama. Thank you so much.
I love it. Thank you for having me.
The Foxy Mama Podcast is here to entertain and share general insights. Our content is not a substitute for personalized advice from professionals like financial advisors, physicians, or therapists. So enjoy the Foxy vibes, but consult the superheroes for personalized advice.